story begins at Seiwa Girls Academy. Right now, exam results have just gone up on the school boards, and every single girl is crowded around them, waiting, praying that their grades somehow beat their expectations. It is always a moment of pure tension and anxiety, the desire for a good score wrestling with the fear of being dragged into makeup exams. And it is no different for two familiar faces, Marina and Akane. Reluctantly, the two shove their way into the crowd to hunt down their names, hoping with a little luck for a decent result. Akane landed at rank 32 in the whole school, which is honestly pretty solid. Marina bombed this one. Naturally, the girls are curious about who claimed the #1 spot in the entire school. Marina goes to check that top position, and she does not look the least bit surprised. First place belonged to a girl named Tsukishima Emiri. Akane asks if that is the same girl from their own class. Marina confirms it and adds a little more. This was a serious girl, dedicated, a genuine prodigy, ranked 3rd in the entire country. And just as she says this, a girl in glasses starts drifting toward that very spot. The moment she notices the approach, Marina slaps a hand over her own mouth. She was not talking trash, but she was still talking about someone behind their back. And yes, you guessed it, that girl was Emiri. And Emiri was not exactly thrilled to catch people discussing her while she was away. Our first real encounter with the smartest girl in Seiwa is ice cold. Instantly, she scolds Marina for wearing perfume and Akane for wearing lipstick. The two offenders clearly know they are guilty. They turn bright red, they grumble, but only inside their own heads. And the second Emiri turns her back, Marina lets the complaints fly out loud. Akane just admits she was in the wrong, but even she has to point out that this girl was being awfully strict for a fellow student. The prodigy stays the center of the conversation. Marina keeps painting the picture. Emiri, beautiful and brilliant as she was, seemed socially hopeless. She had few friends, and openly criticizing her classmates like that, she was guaranteed to have enemies at this school. Akane is caught off guard by the word enemies, but Marina backs it up with a real case. Apparently, Emiri had reported a second-year student for smoking, which got the girl suspended and stirred up serious tension in that family. A family made up of 3 sisters born in 3 back-to-back years. While our 2 heroines go about their ordinary lives, we are introduced to 3 girls with an incredibly intimidating aura and dead serious faces. That can only mean bad news. The oldest sister, the smoking girl, the middle sister, and the youngest of the 3? The 3 sisters decide to confront Emiri, and the air is already thick with tension. The smoking sister cuts straight to the point. 2 full weeks of suspension. 2 weeks the middle sister did not enjoy one bit. What also grinds her gears is that the girl who ratted her out was a freshman, a girl who had just walked into the school and immediately went looking for trouble with a senior. Emiri, for her part, is clearly uncomfortable being cornered like this, yet she refuses to show a single crack of weakness, even staring down the odds. Without saying a word, the girl simply walks away, ignoring the obvious problem in front of her. And that only makes the sisters angrier, because to them, this girl was arrogant and infuriating. The middle sister tries to crank the situation up. She was deeply bitter about the whole episode, and she begs the oldest sister to step in. But the oldest sister tells her there is no need to rush, because she already has a plan. She knew that the triplets' father was an extremely important client of Emiri's father, and that Emiri's father's business was teetering right on the edge of bankruptcy. So it was only a matter of time before Emiri's family came crawling to their most important clients for favors, meaning the sister's father. And that was the plan. They would exploit the coming moment of weakness in Emiri's family to punish the girl. With that Machiavellian scheme locked in, the 3 sisters break into smiles. Wicked, malicious smiles. So let us leave the sisters aside for a while and cut back to Emiri. Right now she is heading home. But out on the streets, she spots someone she recognizes walking ahead. This person looked like a middle-aged man, shoulders slumped, head hanging low, the picture of defeat. The girl calls out "Dad," and the man responds. That was Emiri's father. Unlike the stoic posture she wears at school, in her father's presence she softens into something much more like a little girl. She quickly wraps herself around his shoulder and greets him warmly. Then she asks what her father was doing out on the street at that hour. His face already clashes with the girl's bright energy. He says he was on his way back from the bank. He says nothing more after that, but the mood turns heavy. Emiri starts to feel it, and her initial spark begins to fade. So she tries to change the subject, maybe sensing that she should try to lift her father's spirits. She suggests they could go on outings together, tossing out places the 2 of them could visit. But this attempt fails, spectacularly. Her father does not perk up. If anything, he sinks even deeper into gloom at the conversation. His mind simply was not open to any of it. And at the end of it all, it really does seem like Emiri is a deeply self-centered girl with some serious social problems. And night falls over the Tsukishima household. The father tells the mother about the visit he paid to the bank. And the one overhearing this conversation was the couple's daughter. She hears that the visit was meant to secure a loan for the family, and that the request had been denied. The situation looked tense for that family, since sales were low and they were right on the brink of bankruptcy. Then the Tsukishima mother says they should try to land a new contract with director Numachi, who happened to be the father of the very sisters we met earlier. It seemed the story those girls told was coming true faster than anyone expected. This little episode made Emiri understand her family's real situation a bit more, and it left her in a vulnerable position for everything that was about to come. And the next day, at school, Emiri starts fretting over problems that should never belong to the children, but strictly to the parents. But her quiet moment is broken by an unexpected compliment from Marina, praising the beauty of the smartest girl in school. Emiri did not appreciate being ambushed in the middle of her introspection. Marina apologizes. Then she asks to sit down right there, next to her. Emiri does not look nearly as enthusiastic as her classmate, but she agrees, without showing the slightest bit of interest. Suddenly, a little card leaps out of Emiri's notebook. Marina snatches the card up and recognizes it instantly. It was a card from a fighting game. Apparently, Emiri liked video games, but she did not enjoy having her secret exposed like that. What Emiri really did not expect, though, was that she would hiccup at that exact moment. She flushes red at the sudden slip, and she keeps hiccuping again and again. Marina is delighted watching her always so serious, so aloof classmate suddenly struggling with something this human and this ordinary. Marina digs through her memory for some trick that might help, and tells her to say the word Daizu. Maybe that will do it. Emiri pushes back a little, but she says the magic word. Except it seems the magic failed because the hiccups keep right on going. Emiri gets annoyed, feeling like she was fooled by an obviously bogus remedy. Marina still tries to act like she truly believed it would work, but the two classmates' chat gets cut short when the Trouble Sisters roll up on the freshmen, sweetly praising the girl for studying so hard even after class. Then the smoking sister calls Emiri aside for a more private chat. Trouble on the horizon. They stop at a quiet, empty corner near the school stairs. The smoking sister brings up the story of how, sure enough, Emiri's father had gone to their father asking for help. She claims that in reality, their father did not want to sign the contract that Tsukishimas proposed. But apparently, the girls stepped in and asked their father to sign it, purely to help out their classmate. And then she lands the conclusion. The Tsukishima family had been saved by nothing but the goodwill of the sisters. Hearing this story, Emiri thanks them for their support, but something tells me gratitude was not what these girls were actually after. Emiri's collar is suddenly yanked hard. Sharply, the smoking sister barks at her. If she wanted to show gratitude, then she should bow her head to do it. Emiri challenges the order. She asks what could possibly be so fun about forcing another person into total submission. The smoking sister fires back, saying that actually, it would be a whole lot of fun to watch the goody two-shoes humiliate herself for the very person she got suspended. Emiri still holds her ground. She was far too proud to accept this humiliation just to show a little gratitude. But finally, the smoking sister slaps her trump card on the table. If Emiri would not bow to the sisters, the one who would pay the price was her father. Canceling the contract between their parents would mean bankruptcy for the Tsukishimas. Emiri thinks of her father, and finally caves to the pressure. She was already playing by the sisters' rules now. Grimly, Emiri's legs fold beneath her and she drops to her knees. Marina, who had been standing there the whole time without saying a single word, shows real dread at where this is heading. The sisters on the other side were absolutely loving every second of it. Finally, on her knees with her head bowed, Emiri thanks the sisters for their kindness. But of course, they would never stage this entire performance just for a simple thank you. What they wanted was Emiri's complete submission to their every whim. Emiri, finally grasping how precarious her situation is, can only nod along. The sisters glance at each other, celebrating that their plan was a total success. And they start plotting out the next steps in the girl's humiliation. They agree that if this girl was the third-ranked student in the country, then she could serve as their tutor, locking in her new responsibility from here on out, teaching the sisters. In despair, there is nothing Emiri can do but agree to the plan. To the sisters' delight and the passive Marina's dismay, the Trouble Sisters then head home together, thrilled. Their goal had been achieved and they had secured Emiri's submission, but their sadism was nowhere close to being satisfied. So they map out the next stage of the humiliation. Obviously, they had zero interest in actually learning anything from Emiri, since she was just a freshman to two upperclassmen. The real plan was to turn the study sessions into bullying sessions. And with that, they walk off, deeply satisfied. Meanwhile, Emiri picks herself up off the floor, brushes the dust off her clothes, and tries to reassemble her composure. Marina, utterly useless this entire episode, walks over to her classmate. With nothing left to do, Emiri slips on a mask of composure and stoicism, and simply says everything was fine. In fact, even the hiccups were gone now. But as she leaves, we see the girl's real face. She was deeply worried about what was coming next. And Marina realizes it too, that this problem was only just beginning. Let us move to the next day at Seiwa School. More precisely, we are in the Seiwa Library. Except this library does not look much like a library. There is music playing in the background. There are snacks and drinks too. Is this a library or a little party? And behold, a book comes slamming down onto the table. The smoking sister commands, "Solve this problem." And who was the teacher for the smoking sister? Yes, you guessed it, Emiri. The girl was seated at the table to tutor the trouble sisters, but it seems most of them were not exactly interested. The youngest was vibing to the music. The oldest was munching on snacks. Emiri points out that this question was extremely hard and would never show up on the exam. Even so, she tries to work through it. Right on cue, the youngest cranks up the volume in her ear. The sisters were not here to play fair. The oldest then taunts her. Was being ranked third in the country just a lie? After all, she could not even solve this one problem. With great difficulty, she finally cracks the trigonometry question, and she is ready to teach. But she is immediately cut off. The youngest and oldest sisters complain about the way she was teaching. It was way too hard to follow. So Emiri gets punished for teaching the sisters badly. One of them grabs her head and pins her down. Then they launch a barrage of verbal attacks at the defenseless girl. But the smoking sister decides to escalate the psychological violence and move on to physical action. She grabs a mechanical pencil and clicks the tip out, longer and longer. Then she criticizes Emiri for the suspension she received, making the motive behind this attack crystal clear. And she strikes savagely with the point of the pencil, driving it into Emiri's arm. Emiri collapses onto the table, overcome by the pain of the blow. The trouble sisters look her up and down. For today at least, they seemed satisfied. But only for today. Because as they leave the library, they tell Emiri, "We are counting on you tomorrow too, teacher." Emiri stays there, head bowed, hurt, crushed by the humiliation, and terrified of her future, because it was clear this would not end with just one day. On the way back from school, the brilliant girl sits down by the riverbank, lost in thought. She touches her arm, and it still aches from that vicious stab of the smoking sister's pencil. That pain was a reminder of all the psychological violence she had suffered from the trouble sisters earlier. There was no way to keep from feeling utterly depressed. But a familiar bark seems to chase those sad thoughts away. Yes, a familiar bark, because it belongs to our adorable Chaco Amamiya. It seems Emiri already knew this little dog because she is overjoyed to see her again. But Chaco was not alone. A few steps away stood little Amamiya alongside Marina. The two were searching for Chaco, while Akane warned her to be careful not to slip. All for nothing. She barely finished saying "be careful" before Marina takes an embarrassing tumble, to her friend's secondhand shame. Then Akane spots a scene she never expected to witness. It was Chaco planting vigorous licks all over Emiri, and that girl who is usually so cold and so serious was melting into laughter from the tickling. Akane was stunned to see a side of her she never knew existed. Marina, meanwhile, was still recovering from her fall. Seeing Akane, Chaco quickly leaps out of Emiri's arms to run to her owner, leaving the girl a little disappointed. But thanks to that, she notices her classmate standing nearby, watching this unusual little scene. Spotting her classmate, Marina rushes to strike up a friendly conversation, trying to build a bridge. Emiri seizes the moment and asks if they knew the little dog, which Marina confirms. This was Chaco, and she was Akane's dog. Emiri feels a small spark of happiness knowing her canine friend already had a home. And judging by the affection Akane poured on her, she was being well cared for. Marina mentions that she and Akane were planning to grab a snack nearby, and that if Emiri wanted, the three of them could go together. Emiri politely declines the invitation, but Marina tries to insist, since she was dead set on getting closer to the girl in glasses. She grabs her arm as an attempt to break down the walls, but she makes a mistake. The arm Marina grabbed was the exact same wounded arm of Emiri, who answers with a scream of pain. Emiri lunges to protect her injury. Her face twists in agony. Marina asks what happened to the girl's arm, her face still clearly showing the pain. She tries to wave off her classmate's concern, lying that it was nothing. Marina knew that her new friend had been cornered by the three trouble sisters, but she did not know what had gone down in the library earlier, so she asks if this pain was the result of bullying. Emiri insists nothing happened, but the lie was so obvious that Marina refuses to let it go. So she calls Akane over, so the three of them can talk about what happened. The three then head to the Amamiya residence. There, they give first aid to Emiri's wound. While bandaging her up, they try to pry more details out of her, but the girl in glasses insists it was nothing. A nail. Yes, apparently an exposed nail was how she got the wound. Akane does not buy it for a second. She says maybe a klutz like Marina could hurt herself all on her own, but someone like Emiri would never make such a silly mistake, so she keeps pressing for the truth. Emiri feels cornered and snaps back aggressively at Akane's questioning. Marina, for her part, is a little hurt to realize her friend saw her as such a klutz. The situation had reached a stalemate. Emiri was immovable about revealing her circumstances, but the problems were far too obvious to ignore. But some timely barking shows up to break the deadlock. Chako is barking toward the oldest Amamiya sibling, Shinpei, though he does not look too thrilled with the canine welcome and threatens to turn the little dog into a barbecue. After shaking off the dog, Shinpei walks into the house, exhausted and overheated. And of course, a young boy walking into a room with 3 girls, one of them partially undressed, could only lead to the classic gag, the gushing nosebleed and the girls shrieking, "Kya!" Now that the subject is no longer the wound, the girls decide to tackle the topic of tonight's dinner, and they settle on stew. Shinpei, though, is worried about the financial side. Money was tight, so he asks Akane not to buy anything too expensive. It is impossible to say whether the girls got the message, because the 3 of them set off for the supermarket bursting with excitement. I do not think financial limits are anywhere on their list of concerns. Emiri tries to decline the invitation, and Shinpei tries once more to remind them to save money. Emiri announces that she was not planning to have dinner with them, and that she would be heading home. Shinpei, however, reads this as condescension, and this time it was the right word. He turns to face the wall, and with tears in his eyes apologizes for them being poor, implying that Emiri had turned down the invite out of pity. Emiri feels embarrassed at being so misunderstood, and with no other option, decides to accept the invitation, just so they would not get the wrong idea about her. And so, off we go to the supermarket to see how the girls are getting along. Akane and Marina look thoroughly entertained picking out the stew ingredients. Emiri, on the other hand, hangs back a little, distant from them, still lost in thought, but a voice comes over to talk to her. It was Shinpei's voice. He asks how her arm is doing, worry written all over his face. She, however, sticks to the lie that it was an accident, and that he should not worry. Shinpei hears her out, but he quickly figures out what was really going on. So he takes a gentler approach than his sister. While playing around with the turtles on display there, he mentions that sometimes you should not hide your secrets, nor bottle up your feelings. He adds that friends are exactly what friends are for, to share the weight of your problems, and that if she needed help, she needed to ask her friends for it. And as he says this, the turtle does not appreciate Shinpei's face one bit, and quickly chomps down on his finger. Shinpei then wraps it up. Friends, that is what they are for, right? Emiri slowly begins to understand that maybe she really did need help, more than she was letting herself show. While the friend and the brother share this heartfelt talk about support and the value of friendship, 2 other friends are not quite so in sync. Akane insists on putting turnip in the stew. Marina insists on wonton. Common sense says neither idea makes any sense, and Shinpei starts rethinking his advice. Maybe it is not such a great plan for Emiri to rely on those 2 after all. The girl in glasses, meanwhile, just watches, dumbfounded. But something shifts inside her, and she decides to open up just a little and take off her mask of stoicism. She mentions to Shinpei that she is an only child. She never had any siblings, and she asks if becoming Akane's friend means she gets a brother thrown into the package. Shinpei is caught off guard by the comment, which sounded a lot like a compliment, and he gets flustered. Still bashful, he answers that if she wants, then yes, he would be her brother too. Emiri then says sweetly, "Oni-chan." It was just a bit of teasing from the girl, but it seems Shinpei is deeply weak to little sisters. Akane and Marina, meanwhile, still had not reached any agreement on turnip versus wonton. Seeing that they could spend the entire night arguing over turnip or wonton, Emiri decides to step in. To end the debate, she declares that she would be tonight's cook, because she trusts her own culinary skills. Akane and Marina look thrilled with the suggestion, and they decide to help their friend's cooking venture. "Okay, then let us bring the turnip. Here, take the wonton," they say. Emiri declares, "Neither one is going in the stew." Shinpei is certain that tonight's cook is going to have her work cut out for her. Night falls, everyone is fed, and now it is time to head home. Akane and Chako walk Emiri all the way to her house. The girl in glasses points out that being out this late at night breaks the school rules, and normally it would be her job to report a student, but it was just a little joke. She also mentions that she was glad to have met Shinpei, and even admits she is a bit jealous that Akane has a brother like him. The little sister scoffs at her own brother, and says that if she wanted, she could borrow him. Now that the mood was far lighter than it was earlier by the river, Akane pulls Emiri aside to ask if everything was truly okay with her. Emiri, with a calmer expression, says she was doing much better now, thanks to Akane. Then Emiri says her goodbyes to her classmate. Akane says they should hit up karaoke next time they meet. Emiri agrees and heads off. Akane is happy to end the day on good terms with a new friend. At the start of the day, she was deeply down because of the bullying, and her closed off, few friends' personality had made her shut out any outside help. But the Amamiyas brought a comfort Emiri desperately needed, and got her to open up a little to her new friends. And that matters, because she is going to need their help badly for what comes next. A new day arrives at Seiwa School. Emiri gets to school and gets ready to swap her shoes for the ones stored in her locker. But she feels a sharp pain, one that rips a scream out of her. Something was not right. She inspects the shoes she had just slipped on, the ones that had been sitting in her locker until now. She flips them over and the culprit reveals itself. Screws. A whole pile of screws tumbling out of that shoe. One of the most classic forms of Japanese bullying. The Trouble Sisters burst out laughing for pulling off the most cliché bullying move imaginable. Slyly, the younger sisters say they were eagerly looking forward to teacher Tsukishima's next lesson. But the girl was recharged after blowing off some steam the night before, and she is not intimidated. She stares the sisters down with real confidence. The smoking sister feels challenged and asks why she thinks she can stare them down like that. Emiri, however, simply turns and walks off without saying a single word. The three sisters who had been cackling moments ago were now dead serious. Before this encounter, they felt fully in control. But Emiri's combative posture signaled that this fight would not be the one-sided beatdown the Trouble Sisters wanted. In this scenario, the smoking sister takes the most logical action there is when your opponent resists. Escalate the bullying. No more childish pranks. They were about to step into far more adult territory now. Let us head to the girls' room to see what the sisters were about to cook up. We see a hand holding a cigarette. It was an offer for Emiri. Go on, smoke it. An offer that looked an awful lot like an order. Emiri states the obvious, that smoking is forbidden inside the school. But the smoking sister never had any intention of playing by the rules of good behavior. The point was not whether it was forbidden or not, but that Emiri was being forced to smoke. Emiri tries to resist one more time. She is clear about it, saying she does not smoke. The smoking sister already saw that reaction coming, and her ace in the hole was predictable. Sounds like you want your dad's failing company to go down the drain. That is what she said, with a wicked smile. Emiri concedes defeat. She criticizes the girl's attitude, but understands there was nothing to be done except play by her rules. There was far too much at stake in that moment, and so she accepts the offered cigarette. The smoking sister smiles. This round she had won. Emiri then takes a drag, and since she was not a smoker, the coughing fit follows immediately after that first puff. The Trouble Sisters all fall into laughter watching the young prodigy smoke so clumsily, but they still were not satisfied. Far from it, actually. Once again, Emiri gets an offer that, to the unsuspecting, looked like an invitation, but the wicked smile gave away the trap. The girl was being invited to check out a cool place that very night. Meanwhile, Marina was strolling through the halls of Seiwa, singing without a single care in the world. As she passed near that emptier corner of the floor, she notices the four girls talking. She thinks that once again Emiri was tangled up with those sisters. Marina knew that something was very, very wrong. As promised, we too got invited to this cool place. If you were thinking of a nightclub, you thought right. The favorite hangout of 100% of the bad people in this story. Emiri was clearly out of place there, standing in her Seiwa uniform. She even says it was her first time at a club. The Trouble Sisters, on the other hand, were dressed far more appropriately for the venue. Emiri quickly becomes a hit with the guys in that place, but probably for the most criminal reasons imaginable. She manages to resist, for now at least. Some other girls come over to greet the smoking sister. She introduces Emiri to her friends, and even praises how smart she is. You would almost think they were friends, and not people looking to stab each other in the back. Emiri makes an attempt to slip away. Obviously, the sisters would not allow it. The night had not even started. Neither had the sadism. Soon, she finds herself surrounded by the smoking sisters' friends, and now it was clear why she had been so cordially introduced to them. In that moment, Emiri was encircled, being blamed for causing the smoking sisters' suspension. Marina had followed her friend to that nightclub to see what was going on, but there was no doubt left. This was without question a trap set by the Trouble Sisters, and Emiri needed help urgently, so she pulls out her phone. There was no other way out but to call in the hero of the story to fix the situation. She calls Akane and gives her the location, telling her Emiri was in serious trouble. But Marina is a klutz, and her phone is quickly confiscated by some random criminal NPC of the place. The NPC is thrilled to see a girl in a Seiwa uniform, and Akane hears the call cut off. She was washing dishes, but it seems tonight she's going to have to pull a double shift as a vigilante of justice too. She recalls the location, Red Marquee in Shibuya. That was the next stop. A criminal NPC approaches Emiri and says he wanted to play, and it certainly was not tag or hide and seek. Emiri argues back. There were plenty of girls there for him to play with. The NPC then says fine. He would go play with that other Seiwa girl instead. Emiri is caught completely off guard. What other Seiwa girl? Emiri had no luck this night. The person who had come to rescue her had become another captive. And worse, she was being used as leverage. Over on Marina's side, the NPCs had her cornered and were ready for their crime. Marina, for her part, was clearly far more vulnerable than her friend. Emiri tries to convince them to let Marina go, but she had nothing to bargain with except herself. And that was exactly the deal the smoking sister wanted. A bottle of whiskey is slammed down onto the table. Emiri and Marina start to grow even more anxious. The rules were simple. Emiri had to drink that entire bottle of whiskey by herself. If she finished it all, the two of them would walk out untouched. The criminal NPCs laugh maliciously. They do not believe for a second that the girls would actually walk out untouched after downing all of that. Marina looks at the bottle and cannot believe a girl like them could ever drink all of that on her own. Seeing the girl's hesitation, the smoking sister tries to sweeten the pot. If you drink it all, maybe a failing company can be saved. Emiri looks at her and asks if she was talking about her father's company. The smoking sister just huffs. I cannot tell you if that was a yes or a no, but the smart move would be to distrust anyone this hostile towards you, though it is not like Emiri had many options left. So she stares at the bottle and tries to convince herself it was possible. With this much on the line, the task had to be possible. And so, Emiri accepts the proposal. She would drink the whiskey. In the background, the smoking sister gives the order to the predator NPC. The young student would never handle that much alcohol in her body. The moment she passed out, the predator NPC and his gang could have their fun with her. And we see the crowd, all fired up, rooting naturally for Emiri to fail. Marina grows deeply worried about what Emiri had just agreed to. This is insane, Marina thinks. Meanwhile, Akane races through the night in search of the club to rescue her friends. Will she make it in time? A tense Emiri sits down at the table, bracing herself mentally for the worst, but her face gives away her despair. The glass of whiskey is generously poured. The smoking sister gives the signal for the challenge to begin. The macabre crowd is savoring every second of this sad spectacle. Marina worries, but sadly the only thing she can do is hope for the best. The Trouble sisters also savor sadistically, the moment they would finally avenge the middle sister's suspension. Emiri reaches for the glass and picks it up, staring firmly at her target, her first ever contact with the drink. And she downs it all in a single gulp. A macabre euphoria spreads through the toxic air of that club. Immediately after the gulp, Emiri starts coughing. The predator NPCs begin to close in around her, like vultures circling a prey about to go vulnerable. Emiri is stunned by the effect of the alcohol. She did not expect it to hit this hard, and she certainly was not ready for it. The situation was quickly slipping out of her control. The smoking sister then swoops in to mock her. She remarks that this reaction was so typical of a girl who had never had a drink before. Emiri timidly admits she really had never drunk anything like it before. The predator NPCs once again roar with delight. Everything was going exactly as they planned. One of them steps up to Emiri to pile on even more pressure. He mocks the fact that a girl this proper and this spoiled would accept a challenge like this without knowing the consequences. He even asks if she knew what would happen if she passed out. Emiri falls silent at the NPC's words. She gets another glass. The pattern repeats. She stares it down hard, taking a breath, downs it all in one gulp, and, again, coughs from the effects of the drink. But she was starting to show clear signs of weakness. Another glass was tipped back. While Emiri was still recovering, the smoking sister pressures her, telling her to try harder, because there was still plenty left in the bottle. She was determined to force the freshman to drink every last drop. Emiri's vision was already going blurry. In any controlled setting, this would already be the moment for her to stop. But the bullies wanted more, so much more. Another glass is filled. Once again, the pressure for Emiri to hurry up and drink, and her face said it all. There was not much left before her complete collapse. The situation was already critical. But she tips the glass back once more. That was already the fifth. The worse her condition got, the more the audience cheered. But after this last glass, now it was her body that answered back. Emiri bolts for the bathroom. The crowd erupts at the first sign of failure, the vomiting. She tries to expel whatever she can. Marina tries to exchange a few words with the girl still recovering, but her relevance to this case is zero. So irrelevant, in fact, that Emiri does not even answer her friend. She simply pulls herself together and returns to the challenge. The sixth glass is emptied. Emiri makes a Herculean effort to ignore the blaring signals from her body and asks them to fill the next glass. The crowd praises the girl's determination, a treacherous kind of praise. Another glass is filled. Emiri's hands tremble as she holds the glass. It now takes two hands just to grip one small object. At that moment, Akane finally arrives at the club. Marina screams at her to stop. The situation was already far too dangerous for them. Even so, she closes her eyes and braces for one more dose. But before the liquid could reach her mouth, her hand is seized by Akane. Akane, more determined than Marina, orders Emiri to stop, telling her that going on with this was pure foolishness. Emiri was extremely groggy by that point, but she recognizes her friend. Marina feels relieved too. Finally, someone who could actually help. Emiri still tries to argue. She was doing this for her parents, to protect her father's company. She had to drink, at any cost. Akane knew nothing of what her friend was saying, because all of Emiri's suffering had stayed bottled up inside her. She never opened up, never asked for help, and finally she topples over. Passed out, she crashes to the floor. Akane panics. She tries to call out to her, but in vain. So she asks Marina to grab some ice to attempt first aid on the girl. and Marina sets off on one of her rare contributions to solving the crisis. The ice is applied to Emiri. They do everything they can to wake her. Meanwhile, Akane turns to the bullies. She knew nothing about their feud with Emiri, but she asks if this was not already enough to call the whole thing off. But the sisters disagreed. In fact, they considered Akane's meddling a violation of the rules that they and Emiri had agreed to at the start. Akane quickly realizes that expecting a reasonable conversation with these sisters would be a fantasy, so she decides to play their game. She volunteers to continue whatever challenge Emiri had accepted before she arrived. The smoking sister then holds up the bottle and explains, if Akane wanted to continue the challenge in her friend's place, then she would have to drink the entire bottle of whiskey. The Predator NPCs love the idea of a fresh victim. If even Akane failed this challenge, all three would be at the mercy of those animals dressed up as people. Akane is heartbroken to realize that people still find entertainment in tormenting others. But the smoking sister just laughs at her sentimentality. She was having the time of her life watching the degradation of a student the school considered exemplary. The whole club seems to echo with the girls cackling. Every last NPC laughing in sync. There was no other way out. Akane caves and agrees to continue Emiri's challenge. Marina is horrified. She argues that this was not a solution. It was just repeating Emiri's mistake. Akane counters that she could not see any other way out. To her, this was the only way to help Emiri. Even Marina is a little let down by her friend's hopeless move. Put like that, defeat seemed inevitable. Marina then glances at the bench nearby. She sees her friend gasping, in desperate need of help. This whole thing had to be resolved, and fast. So Marina finally shows some backbone, and decides to share Akane's burden. She would drink half the whiskey right alongside her friend. Akane still protests the decision, but Marina smiles. They were friends, and that is why they would do this together. Akane gives up protesting. On the contrary, her friend's support was exactly what she needed to get through this challenge, so she smiles back, tenderly. The Trouble Sisters do not seem to object to the change of challengers, so the next round should begin any moment now. The liquid pours out of the bottle. Now 2 full glasses sit on the table, waiting for the challengers. Akane and Marina get ready to begin drinking. The two start drinking together. Marina cannot down the glass in one go. Akane proves more resilient, and she finishes her first dose. The two start coughing. It seems neither of them had any experience drinking anything with that kind of alcohol content. The Predator NPCs quickly recognize the pattern of their prey and start following the challenges every turn with interest. Marina, being the shorter of the two, feels the effects of the drink far more than her friends. A new glass is filled. Akane already starts her second dose. The effects of the drink begin to take hold in the girl's body, and the third dose follows. The effects start to become visible. Both girls are already groggy. The Predator NPCs move closer and begin hurling filthy taunts. Akane is already seeing everything spin around her. Maybe she will meet the same fate as her friend, and all three will be served up to the Predator NPCs surrounding them. With victory practically in hand, the smoking sister comes in for one final taunt. She grabs a bottle of whiskey and tips it all over. In a humiliating gesture, she pours that drink all over Emiri's face. Still unconscious, the smoking sister then delivers her victory speech, so typical of villains. She recaps exactly why they are all here. It was all because of Emiri's failure of a father, who had to beg others for help just to survive. She implies like father, like daughter. While Emiri's father begs the Trouble Sisters' father for a contract, Emiri begs the Trouble Sisters for mercy in the deal. Obviously, every NPC in the club laughs in agreement with the girl. This crowd sure laughs a whole lot, if you ask me. Finally, she concludes that she could not stand the father or the daughter. Akane hears this, and the anger somehow manages to fuel her, even in that scene of despair. Finally, Akane decides to go all in. She strategically grips the bottle with an inverted fist, and tips the whole bottle back at once, drinking straight from the neck. The bottle drops to the floor, empty. Akane had held up her end of the bargain. The Trouble Sisters are stunned by the reckless, desperate move they just witnessed. Quickly, she decides to hurry before the effects of the drink hit her completely. Looking at the NPCs, she declares victory. She had drunk it all. The NPCs' faces change. They are not confident anymore. They are tense now. To finish it off, Akane decides to teach the Trouble Sisters a lesson. There was nothing wrong with a daughter protecting her family. Akane concludes that the ones in the wrong were the Trouble Sisters, detestable people who only came together to bully others. The Trouble Sisters fall silent. The truth tends to hurt more than any punch. Akane tells her friends that they had finished the challenge and could now head home. But no sooner does she say it than Akane's body finally gives out and she collapses to the floor. All three friends are completely wrecked by the effects of the drink. The Trouble Sisters then start bickering among themselves, blaming the smoking sister for causing this whole mess just because she screwed up at school. The smoking sister fires back, and they will spend the rest of the night arguing right there, only proving Akane's point. And we arrive at the next day, and it seems the friends, now recovered from their boozy night, are going to keep their promise to hit karaoke together. Marina drags Shinpei along by the arm, begging him to join them. He still tries to say he has to work, but I do not think he is convinced enough to escape, or maybe he is just interested in going out. With Marina and Shinpei inside the karaoke room, all that was left was Akane and Emiri to join them. But Emiri is a killjoy and says that karaoke after class was a violation of school rules. Akane says they already promised this the other day, and asks why she suddenly changed her mind. Emiri argues that she had agreed to karaoke on the weekend, not after class. Akane has zero interest in this boring debate and plays hardball. If Emiri wanted to leave, then they should say their goodbyes right here because Akane was not backing down, and she joins Marina and Shinpei. Emiri, still outside, keeps criticizing her friend, but it is pointless. She was already talking to herself. Emiri still gets her indignant little monologue. Why does everyone insist on breaking the rules? But the truth is, after so many brand new experiences in the girl's life, she has, in a way, expanded her narrow view of the world, and she starts to feel the urge to join her friends. And finally, she caves and steps into the karaoke room with her friends, because deep down, she really wanted to sing too. And so, another arc comes to a close, with Akane and Marina making yet another new friend, Emiri. With a personality and a style so different from the other two, the three of them are definitely going to have to find a balance in this relationship. And Shinpei, well, maybe he found himself a new little sister? We shall see.